Welcome to the University of Michigan Dentistry Podcast Series, promoting oral health care worldwide.
One of the most useful auxiliaries used in clinical orthodontics is the addition of the horizontal lingual arch in conjunction with fixed, cemented to all the teeth appliance. As an overview, I'm going to discuss the purposes of the lingual arch. I'm going to discuss its fabrication, the adjustments to it, and the advantages of it over similar appliances. The main purposes of the appliance consist of fixing the upper or lower first molar teeth as a unit. It may be beneficial to look at several slides. First off, in order to see just exactly where we're starting from and where we're going. This first slide demonstrates the application of the separating spring prior to fitting the first band. The second slide shows the impression with the placement of both bands and the attachment, the lingual sheath attachment, prior to pouring the model. This slide actually shows the horizontal lingual sheath as it is applied to the band, the lingual surface of the band, and welded into place. It can be seen that the sheath is placed equidistant occlusal gingival to the band. This is an overall view of the lingual arch so that the viewer can see exactly what the final outcome will be. The tall vertical posts are removed prior to its finish. This impression shows the waxing of the bands in place so that when the model is poured, the wax can be removed to gain full access to the sheath. The steps in construction of the lingual arch itself are demonstrated in these next few slides. This is the folded back portion, the part that fits into the lingual sheath. This is a right angle bend in the first formation of the lingual sheath. This shows a front-on view of the folded back portion, which will adapt into the sheath on the study model. This shows the plier in place in folding and crimping the wire to be placed into the lingual sheath. This slide demonstrates the folded back portion of the lingual sheath, of the lingual arch in the lingual sheath, and the right angle bends along the lingual surface of the model, and the bend position marked with a red pencil. This shows the right angle bend and the plier position. final finishing is started with cutting off the excess vertical post. This slide demonstrates the plier position for the contouring of the anterior arch form and the bends in the posterior part of the lingual arch. This is the final disking of the folded back portion of the lingual arch to facilitate tying. Smoothing and polishing of the ends of the appliance before final insertion. A polishing application of the appliance to brighten it up after it has been heat treated and stress relieved in the oven. This shows a modification of the lingual arch in the horizontal sheath with a vertical insert, and also the position if it were seated from the mesial. This is the tying in procedure using a Matthew needle holder. This slide demonstrates the materials that you've just seen and some of the instruments in the overall view. The bands, the lingual sheath brackets, and the other instruments that we'll talk about in a few moments. This is a clinical view of the lingual arch in place, following the proper contours of the lingual surface of the arch. The lingual arch has many, many purposes in conjunction with conventional orthodontic appliances. Its purposes can be divided into a passive and an active component. The passive features of the appliance are to maintain arch width and to maintain axial inclination of the teeth. These a person can understand to be true advantages in offsetting reciprocal forces and preserving arch width while other forces are applied to the arch. Axial inclinations are maintained with a high degree of fidelity by the close and accurate fit of the wire within the sheath. The active components, offsetting reciprocal forces, the arch can be narrowed or expanded or torqued in order to offset forces delivered to the buccal surface of the teeth. The arch can be both expanded and contracted, and increases in arch length can be achieved with tipping of the various components of the arch. A very desirable feature of the lingual arch is that it can be used as a site of attachment for auxiliaries such as springs and elastic hooks. Now it is time to construct the lingual arch in detail, and I will go through in a step-by-step fashion the actual construction of the appliance that you can see in the different dimensions. The model is already prepared with the lingual sheath fitting horizontally on the lingual surface of the band, right and left and properly positioned. The wax has been removed and the wire bending steps are now in order. A piece of 036 round wire and the lingual arch plier are the beginning instruments. About a half an inch down the length of the wire, the first right angle bend is made. The plier is moved to achieve a perfect right angle and maybe a little on the acute side. Let me refer in a moment to the step that we are going to produce, a folded back portion, and you are looking now at the right angle portion that I've already constructed. I'm going to switch pliers to the 139 to start the folded back portion. Compare it to the wire already constructed. The next step is to crimp the folded back portion so that it will fit securely into the lingual sheath. The crimping is done with the lingual arch plier. Several applications are applied down the length to crush it completely. That step is completed. The next step will be the making of two right angle bends in order to achieve the lingual depth. The right angle bend is made, the wire is straightened in its single plane. Another right angle bend is made in the same plane. Those two bends correspond to the one previously made. The next step is to create a diagonal bend so as to come up to the level of the folded back portion. At this point, the arch form is bent in to the anterior portion of the wire, and its first try is made onto the model. The wire is bent around the thumb and finger, and at this point the wire is tried into the model using plier force. It is slid into place. At this time, the wire configuration of the anterior portion is completed, and the steps are reversed for the left side of the lingual arch. The final steps in the placement of the lingual arch is, of course, the insertion and tying it into place. The final finishing of the appliance is done with a abrasive wheel so as to create a thinning out or a groove on the band side of the folded portion of the lingual arch, as I'm showing here with the disc in the groove. This groove provides a means for the locking ligature wire in and around the ground out portion. The ground out portion is completed on both sides of the wire. The ends of the vertical post are finished down with the use of the abrasive wheel so as to make it perfectly smooth to a patient's tongue and soft tissues. Then the lingual arch is inserted, and you can see that it's inserted from the distal so as to make access much easier and to avoid dangers in chipping and breaking the anterior teeth with plier manipulation. It's generally inserted with a ligature cutter drawn from the distal towards the mesial. It is checked to make sure that it is perfectly passive and lying in close proximity to the lingual sheath. The other side is inserted and moved forward as far as possible. A final check is made so that there is no tissue impingement anywhere around the lingual arch. A piece of 012 ligature wire is passed beneath the lingual arch anterior portion, and slid down along the lingual surface one end of the wire is directed beneath the mesial part of the folded back portion, and it is drawn up tightly. A needle holder is used to move the wire into place. The two ends are grasped in the plier beak, and a conventional twist is made with the end of it just above the mesial portion. The end of the twist is cut with 4 or 5 millimeters of excess left so as the cut end can be tucked well out of the way. A serrated amalgam plugger is used, and the end is tucked beneath the lingual sheath. So that none of the soft tissue areas of the tongue or cheek will be irritated. Let me speak a few moments about adjustments made to the lingual arch. as demonstrated with a clinical case. This slide depicts a lingually trapped upper left central incisor with an overlying primary tooth. The lingual arch is constructed as we have just seen, only adapting it to the upper first molars instead of the lower. You can see that the left central incisor is lingually displaced and the overlying primary tooth is still present. This shows the lingual arch in place with the auxiliary spring soldered to the anterior portion and in full activation against the lingual surface of the central tooth. This shows the final view of the central tooth, which has been fractured off with during an accident, and therefore shows about half the total length of the approximating tooth. The next series of radiographs are going to describe a useful application of the horizontal lingual arch. Everyone has observed impacted second or third molars, which are partially erupted. The mesial impactions of the right and left molars, if they could be uprighted, would be useful teeth. The next X-ray shows the application of separation wires and bands with the lingual sheath on the teeth. The next radiograph shows the bands further repositioned in preparation for placement of the lingual arch. The next radiograph shows the molar teeth in a more upright occlusal position after the lingual arch has achieved its first moving forces. The contacts are wide open and the inner root distance is decreased. The next radiograph shows the lingual arch in place and the more paralleling of the roots of the teeth and the long action of the wire tipping the terminal teeth distally. I would like to describe a second clinical adaptation of the lingual arch, and that is in a full orthodontic problem where the upper arch is constricted and the lower arch is expanded. This is a clinical picture seen very often in lower arches where the first or second molars have been expanded and the upper molars are contracted. The placement of a lingual arch in conjunction with cemented to all the teeth appliances will work out favorably for this type problem. This is the finished result, and you can see the proper interdigitation has been achieved both right and left. And in this instance, the lingual arch was used as a way of constricting or narrowing the lower first molars. I would like to discuss the advantages of the horizontal lingual arch in comparison to the other two lingual arches that are in conventional use. The soldered lingual arch and the vertical post lingual arch are currently being used, but they have their limitations. The soldered lingual arch cannot be adjusted unless the bands are removed and re-cemented. It lacks a certain precision and adaptability. The vertical post is fully adjustable, but it occupies a greater amount of space on the lingual surface of the teeth and requires a locking position which is well within the soft tissue. I would like to review a series of slides showing the disadvantages of these two other lingual arches. This first slide demonstrates a vertical post lingual arch attachment, and the viewer can see that the soft tissue is inflamed, irritated, and a certain amount of hemorrhage because the post extends vertically into the soft tissue, whereas the horizontal sheath occupies a narrow, thin position along the lingual surface. This slide also demonstrates the irritation and hemorrhage occurring around vertical post lingual sheaths where a removable, adjustable locking wire is used. Another view showing the hypertrophy of the soft tissue and the irritation developed in the lingual sheath attachment. In summing up the presentation of the horizontal lingual arch, let me just review for a moment the main features in that it occupies a narrow, thin portion along the lingual surface of the molar teeth. Its insertion is a distal entrance. It is fully adjustable in that it can be contracted, expanded, and torqued in full 3 planes of space. It serves anywhere along the arch for the addition of auxiliaries, and it can be used in conjunction with conventional orthodontics.
You've been listening to a presentation from the University of Michigan School of Dentistry, which is dedicated to supporting open learning and open educational resources. This recording is licensed under the Creative Commons. It may be reused and redistributed for nonprofit use. Please attribute materials to the University of Michigan School of Dentistry and redistribute under this same license. For more information on how this and other University of Michigan School of Dentistry recordings may be used, visit www.dent.umich.edu/license.